Now that you've taken a look at the Tinker case, both in a reading and in a short little video, just to break the case down for you, and this is what you can end up putting in your notes here. Uh, the issue was, is symbolic speech as protected as verbal expression? Now, this case was bigger than schools, though it certainly does relate to schools in general. But, the Tinkers wore their armbands to protest the Vietnam War. Now, just to put this in some historical perspective, at the time, opposition to the war wasn't necessarily a popular position. And unlike the memories we have from history classes of Vietnam War protests, that was all towards the latter half of the 60s, late in the 1960s, in fact. And in 1965, opposition to the war was not very widespread. Most people supported the war, and so to wear these black armbands certainly wasn't something that many people necessarily agreed with. The principal warned the Tinkers not to wear the armbands. They came back, wore them anyways, and they were told to stay away indefinitely until they took them off. So eventually they do come back after several days of suspension, but then they decide to sue the school district and claim that their free speech rights were violated, and in particular, the right to symbolic speech, non-verbal expression. And so the case went the whole way to the United States Supreme Court, and the court found in favor of the Tinkers. And they set a precedent, and we're going to talk about, precedents and kind of start to apply them. So this is important that you understand the precedent for each case, because this is what's going to guide the courts in the future. And guide the government in the future. And basically, in this situation, telling people whether symbolic speech is as protected as verbal expression. And the court said it is. And so basically, symbolic speech is as protected. And another important message that goes along with free speech issues is the idea that the government can't restrict speech just because it disagrees with the message. And you're going to see this applied not only to freedom of speech, but also freedom of the press, freedom of association, freedom of assembly, even freedom of religion. And so that's a key concept here to grasp in terms of free speech rights. But like I said, Tinker versus Des Moines was bigger than schools, though it does apply in schools, definitely. But the idea that symbolic speech is as protected as any sort of verbal expression. The next free speech topic I'd like to take a look at is obscenity. And, there's a famous quote from a Supreme Court justice in which he said, I don't know, I can't explain to you what obscenity is, I only know it when I see it. And that's part of the problem with trying to define obscenity. I do have a definition I'm going to put up here. Obscenity is defined as anything that treats sex or nudity in an offensive manner or that exceeds the recognized standards of society. I'm sure this poses some questions in your brain as you read it. Okay, first of all, anything that treats sex or nudity in an offensive manner. Well, what exactly is an offensive manner? Exceeds the recognized standards of society. Well, whose standards? And that kind of brings us to the next question, is what's the problem with trying to legislate obscenity? It's very difficult because whose opinion do we use? Everybody has a different opinion as to what is obscene. And that difference in opinion can be based on gender. Men may use certain things as less offensive than women. It could be based on age, where you assume older people are offended easier than younger people. It could be based on nationality. It could be based on religion. It could be based on geography, where you live. People in the South might be more or less tolerant of things than people, let's say, in New York City. But if we would somehow come up with a general law that regulated obscenity, we would still have a problem. And that problem is that even if we can agree upon a definition now, within a few years it could change. 10, 20 years from now, that law might be obsolete because opinions about what is offensive change over time. There was a movie, Gone with the Wind, that was made in the 1930s, and the final line of the movie, from one lead character to the other, was, "Frankly, my dear, I don't give a damn." Now, that would not even cause a ripple and can be found in TV shows every day, but at the time it was a huge deal. It was considered very offensive. And so, obviously, things change over time, and the change doesn't have to be that dramatic. The only laws dealing with obscenity that we can agree upon are ones that ban expression that shows something illegal. For example, child pornography is outlawed because it shows a sexual act between an adult and a minor. That's an illegal act, and so the minor is the victim of a crime in that video. But the U.S. Supreme Court has gone as far to say that animated child pornography cannot be censored because no actual person is being victimized or injured in it. And so, as distasteful as that may be, that shows how far the freedom of speech goes. Unfortunately, it can lead to the KKK marching in your town. You're going to look at some other cases in this unit similar to that, and we have to kind of accept the bad with the good. Another quote through the past is that freedom of speech isn't meant to protect the speech that we love, but also the speech that we hate. And to start to ban certain speech because we disagree with it would kind of set us down a slippery slope where, okay, now we say that this expression can be censored. Well, what's to say that something that I want to say or you want to say won't be censored too? And so we're going to take a look, though, at a case involving a school. And in this school situation, we have a person making a speech, in a case Bethel versus Frazier, and I'm going to end this video and kind of direct you to a transcript of the speech. But the basic intro to the story is that this young man in a high school situation was making a speech to nominate his friend for student government, and it was filled with sexual innuendo that led him to be suspended. And the case was challenged in court, and that's what Bethel versus Frazier is about. So when you finish this video, you're going to be given a link to this, the transcript of this speech, and then we're going to take a deeper look at that case and how obscenity can be judged in school, or if it can.